Hi, all. Thank you so much for joining us today for our music director office hours. My name is Keiko, and I'm here to help you figure out how best to use the website and find what you need when you need it. We have lots of questions that we received when you all registered for this event, and we will go through those, but also feel free to drop your additional questions as they come up through the Zoom Q&A at the bottom of your Zoom window and we'll get those addressed as well. We also have a couple APMers working in the background to help with any other questions that might not be music search related. So in general, if you have anything, don't hesitate to reach out in the Q&A and then I'll either address if it's a search related thing or someone will be in touch if it's something else. And if we don't get to your question, if we run out of time by the end of the session, we will get in touch. So don't worry, we won't leave you hanging. All right, with that, I would love to dive in with a highlighted feature on our website that I like to share to get us started and kind of more familiar with the website. I know some of you probably have been using our website for a while and others might be new, so we'll make sure we touch on a little bit of everything for all of you. Today, I wanted to mention that we have really awesome hand curated playlists by our music director team. And this is a good place to start if you just need a couple tracks and you don't really like have time to search and you want something that has been vetted by a music director making these suggestions. So let me show you where to find them. I am going to go ahead and go to our website. Great. So this is our homepage on our website. And then our playlists, you can find them in the left panel over here. And if I click playlists, we have all kinds of things. You can browse through them this way, but I like to use this left panel to kind of get where I need to go. For example, if I'm looking for a specific genre, I can go to genres. I also like to point out our archival toolkit because we have music that was recorded in all of these decades and it's fantastic. It's fun to do a deep dive in these. We also have music specifically for different destinations. And then under useful and popular, that might be a great place for you to go as well. We have things based on settings and locations, holidays, genres, all of that kind of stuff lives here, and it's a great place to kind of dive in. If you want to search for a specific playlist title, you can drop that into the search bar at the top of the left panel here, and you'll find it. So yeah, these playlists are all, like I said, hand curated by music directors who we all know the ins and outs of our libraries and which libraries and tracks to highlight for these genres and styles. So um, it's the cream of the crop here. And then from here, you can use tools like Sounds Like, which we'll dive into in just a little bit, to if you find a track that you like and you want similar stuff, this Sounds Like button is a great place to go. All right, so I want to dive into some of the questions that you all received. And just quickly to answer you, Andy, we have a recording of this and we'd be happy to share it with you if you would like that. So we'll be in touch with that. All right, so our first question was, what are some of the best search terms to find the right music for a specific emotion? It's a pretty broad question in that I don't have the specific emotion that you are looking for, but I figure I can run through like a couple examples and scenarios and then we can kind of go from there. So, I'm just going to click the little search magnifying glass to kind of get us to our search homepage. And let's start with uh, music for a specific emotion. So let's say you're working on like an advertising spot. Usually you need something that's upbeat and energetic. So I might just start there. I might go energetic. Percussive is often good for advertising because they need like edit points and they need things to kind of like like good beats to edit to. And then I might also add pop because a lot of advertising these days uses pop, right? So, all right, let's hear some of these.
Yeah, holla if you hear me now. I feel like $1 million heights. It doesn't even take me long. It's like it happened overnight.
I like that that one has some edit points there. And yeah, I would definitely use any of these for an advertising spot. So when we're talking about different emotions, I think to hone in on what you're really looking for, ideally, if you can have a genre, that will really help like narrow down the the styles of music since our library is so vast in terms of the genres that we cover. Having some idea of genre is going to be helpful. So in this instance, I put pop. And then I paired it with a mood like energetic and percussive just to kind of like narrow things down a little bit. Another example would be, let's say you're working on a documentary and you need some like, excuse me, uplifting underscore. I might do something like piano to kind of like narrow down our instruments. I might do uplifting to hit the mood and emotional aspect of it. And then a genre that I would really recommend for using for documentaries, especially if you're looking for like score type stuff. Neoclassical really hits like that more elevated, sophisticated feeling. So let's hear a couple of these. And so this style actually kind of touches a little bit on what Jeff was asking for in the chat just a moment ago, looking for emotional track, probably classical instruments, but you've found a lot of piano and would be interested in other options. So in this case, obviously we focused on piano, but if I wanted to tweak this to other options in terms of instrumentation, for starters, if you really didn't want any piano at all, you can use the drop down here and hit not to exclude piano. That would be step number one if you like really just don't want to hear piano at all. That said, if you're interested in, let's say, like strings and you're okay with some piano in the background, as opposed to excluding piano, I would just remove it from my search and then maybe focus on some other instruments. Like let's say let's do like string section. And I might even throw in words that are associated with strings, things like pizzicato or staccato. I know that's like a technical musical thing, but that will really help you like hone in on string related words. And you can even see them in the track descriptions here. Like this one says staccato and pizzicato. So let's hear a couple of these. So like here's an example where you have both a strings melody and a piano melody. And if you didn't want the piano melody, you can also always go to our stems and then pull the ones that you do want and just omit piano. So that's an option too. You can download stems from here. You would just click download and then check the box include stems and go from there. You'll have your stems package and can mix it to your personal liking and go from there. I also, for something like a documentary, will add in the word documentary that kind of like hones it into a specific music use, right? Because some neoclassical stuff, like this first one, I found like a little bit stuffy and kind of more like Bridgerton-esque than documentary-esque, right? So you might throw in the word documentary to narrow it down to songs that were specifically written with documentaries and those types of background uses in mind. All right. Let's move on to our next question. Best way to find tracks to match familiar songs. This is something that I get asked about a lot. And we have a couple ways to do this. The first way that I'm going to show you is called sonic similarity. And so you can copy and paste a Spotify link or a YouTube link. You could also upload an MP3 or WAV file, AV file, whatever you have, into the search bar, and it will find tracks that sound similar to your reference. So let me grab an example from Spotify. I'll just drag it over so you can see which one I'm grabbing. Oop. Okay. So I will right click and hit share copy link to song. And then I will go over to our website and I will paste that Spotify link right here. Okay, let's hear what these sound like.
I can be. Oh, I ain't gotta get ready. 'Cause I'm already ready for whatever. You better believe. God in heaven is all I need. Don't keep me waiting, girl. I'm down on my knees, yeah. One night for me to prove my love for you.
Cool. So that is one way. The other way, like if let's say you're into something more classic, I will show you like a YouTube link. Let me copy this one, paste it in here. And then let's hear what these sound like.
Pounding a beat, walking the streets, dirt on my shoes, I got the jaywalk blues, dragging my feet, feeling the heat, nowhere to go, there's no one here I know. Tightrope, high rope, walking on a tightrope, high rope, tightrope, going where there's no hope. Everybody up, here comes the party.
Yeah, so that is how I would use sonic similarity to find tracks that are similar to something that is popular. Someone asked, does it work with Apple Music links? I believe not yet, but that it's something that we are working on. So let me get back to you, Jerry, on that. And then the other, okay, so like a few other ways that you could do this. Let's say like this isn't quite hitting exactly what you're looking for. We also have a bunch of tracks that are tagged as inspired by popular artists. So, for example, if instead I wanted to do something like this, you'll see this inspired by, and if I click that, these are specifically tagged by music directors and approved by music directors. So, like, again, this is kind of cream of the crop. It's not an algorithm that generated this list, it's a person. So um, these are often like our best vetted matches for popular artists. So let me just play you like one or two of these.
Back through the night to your arms where everything's right. This world can taste bittersweet, but with you, I feel at home. I just wanna stay close, baby. Wrap up in your warmth, feel your sway, baby. No.
And then oh, one more for you. Yeah, so I again like inspired by is a great place to look for that kind of thing. And then your other option would be, and someone I think Sarah asked about doing prompt search versus a regular search. She mentioned the two types of searches from the search bar. That's I assume you're talking about this little toggle right here. So right now we're in like our regular keyword metadata search. And then if I click the little purple sparkly button, you'll see your search bar turns purple. This is called prompt search, and you can search just like using natural language. So you could even do something like dramatic orchestral, like John Williams Star Wars. Yeah, so sometimes I find like prompt search can be useful for when you are looking for kind of like a general vibe, but not necessarily a song, like a style like that sounds exactly, or not, I shouldn't say exactly, but similar to a specific song. Um, Prompt search will kind of give you more of like a general vibe as instead of honing in on one particular song, it just gives you like, a variety in the style of whatever your prompt says. So using well-known names in prompt is just one way to use prompt search. You can also, as mentioned, so Andy's looking for Napa wine country ambiance. That's something that you could put into prompt search and see what it suggests for you. I do find that like it's only gonna really suggest one genre. So for Napa wine ambiance, let's say prompt search thinks that that lives in sort of like an acoustic, organic, natural genre. That's what your whole list is going to be. And then you can tweak your prompt based on that. So let's say like the acoustic guitar is not working, you want strings, you can just add strings to the prompt to kind of like narrow things down from there. And then, like I said, as you start to find things that are working for you and you want more similar to it, I like to use the sounds like button as a good starting place. You can go ahead and click that, and then it'll put your track as we call this the seed track now, and we'll find tracks that are similar to your seed track. You'll notice as I hover my mouse over the waveform, there's this little thing that says choose segment. So if there's a particular spot in the song that is really doing what you are trying to emulate, you can just go ahead and click on the waveform to choose the segment and narrow down your results. You click update results, narrow it down so that we're really just looking at this portion of the song is what we're trying to match the closest. I find that to be really helpful, especially when a song has, like a really quiet beginning, but I'm actually looking for tracks that are similar to the big back end. I will make my segment over the back end portion, and then I'll be able to find tracks that are more similar to that specific part. You'll also notice as you go through your results, when you're using sonic similarity or sounds like, there are these highlighted purple sections. And these are the sections that are the closest matched to your seed track or reference. So when you hit play, actually, let me let it do its thing before I misspeak. Okay, yeah. You'll see it automatically started in the purple section where it's like the most um the best match to what we're hearing up here. And then you can always jump around in the waveform just by clicking around to hear the rest of the track. But that is like a nice quick way to audition these in the section that is supposed to be most relevant for you. That way you don't have to spend time like wondering where in the song is like the best match. Yeah, so that's how I would find similar songs. Then let's move on to our next question. It says, what are new features directors and producers should know of when doing a music search? Okay, so we talked a little bit about prompt search and sonic similarity. These are features that we've had for a little while, but are new if you haven't been searching recently. The other things that I wanted to point out, we launched collaborative playlists this year. And while this isn't a search tool, it is a really great collaboration tool within your team to help to like share music back and forth, make notes and all of that kind of stuff. So let me show you how that works. You'll find your projects in this little hamburger icon in the top right. I click that and then I go to my APM and then projects. So I have my projects here, and this is kind of for me, the first step to doing a search is I will create a project first to house all of the tracks that I am liking and put those in projects. So let me just create a new one right now. Let's call it orchestral. Oops. And then you can fill out these areas for future reference or not. It's really like how you prefer to organize your projects. But I'm just going to hit create. And then let's say, I was liking a couple of these tracks. I'm going to highlight them and then I will drag and drop them straight into my project. If you prefer to, so you can drag and drop as I just showed, but the other option is to use the plus button. You highlight over there, it says add to project, and you could do it through this menu as well. I just find drag and drop to be faster for me, but I know there are people on my team who prefer to use the plus button, so it's really a matter of preference there. Okay, so I have my orchestral project, and now I want to share this with my team and invite them to collaborate, add tracks themselves and notes and all that kind of stuff. You'll see there's this invite button here. You can click that. You can invite people by just adding their email addresses. The one thing I will say is that the person has to have a registered APM account under the email address you are sending them to. And then you can pick what role they have in the collaborative playlist. So if you only want them to be able to read and listen to the music, that would be a read only. If you want them to have all of the admin abilities that you have, you can assign them admin and you can have multiple admin people in a playlist. There's no limit as to like how many of each of these roles you can assign to each person. So this is a really great way to collaborate with your teammates. You'll also, once your playlist is made collaborative, like, oops, let me just add myself here just so you can see. Once that happens, you'll be able to see how this little button just popped up. It's called history. And so as I move tracks around, remove and add tracks, all of that will be logged into this history section. Also, this little comments button popped up. This is just like a general feed of comments that you want to make, like check out track number 3, or I really like Great Understanding at, 2 minutes in. You can add comments to here, and then this little button here will tell you who else is involved in the playlist. So collaborative playlist, I think, is just like a really strong tool to be able to quickly share music with your team, especially if you're wanting to like both work on the same project at the same time. Other new features that you might want to know of, brought back by popular demand, I should point out. Going back to our search, we now have this shuffle button here. This is something that we had when we on our old site, and it just wasn't something that we thought people were that into. So we did not carry it over to our new site, but it turns out that a lot of you are using it, which is awesome. So for example, I'm just going to throw in a tag here, and then this shuffle button just randomizes the songs. So sometimes it's nice, like if you have a lot of results and the ones at the top are just not like working for you and you just want to kind of mix it up, the shuffle button will help with that. The other thing is if you are, let's say, like doing other tasks and just want some music on in the background to kind of like audition while you're doing other stuff, you could hit shuffle and then play all and just let it play like a playlist. And yeah, you'll see it says sort random. So that's how you know you're in shuffle mode once you've clicked that button. And yeah, that's shuffle. One other thing that I wanted to mention, it's not necessarily a new feature, but something that is kind of hidden between like under a few things, so you might not notice that it's there. We have the ability to favorite tracks, which I think is apparent with the heart button. But the other one is that you can favorite searches with the heart button here. So let's say you had a search that was really working for you. Let's say I'm looking for something with lyrics and I want it to be like hip hop and I want it to be confident. And let's say like this search really worked for me and I want to be able to revisit it in the future. I can click this heart button and then I can say like confident hip hop and hit save. And then, so let's say it's like a new day, back to the website fresh. I'll go to my little hamburger menu in the top right, and then under my APM, go to favorites. And then up here, searches. We'll find the one that was the confident hip hop. I'll drop it in here. And now I'm back to that search and can listen to more tracks. The cool thing is if you have your sort, right now I have it sort to relevance, which just means the tracks that best suit these terms are going to be at the top. If you sort it instead by release date descending, you'll have the newest tracks that fit these keywords at the top. So when you come to revisit it, now you have the newest tracks at the top that you haven't listened to yet. We release tracks every month on the first Wednesday of every month. So there's constantly new music coming out, and there's probably more music related to your keywords. So that's one thing that I really recommend as a time saver. Like you found a search and it like is hitting all the marks and you want to like bottle it up and never forget it. You can favorite it and then sort your releases by release date when you come back to get those newest tracks at the top. Cool. Let's move on to our next question. It says, how to best search for songs with no lyrics? Okay. There are a couple ways to do this. I will start with pointing out that we have a quick filter over here called instrumental only. This is going to exclude tracks with lyrics and other vocals. So this is a good place to start if you are looking for something instrumental. The other option is if you want to use prompt search, I use the word instrumental within my prompt. So for example, like upbeat instrumental pop like Madonna. Let's hear some of these. Or, for example, something like heartfelt and uplifting instrumental orchestral for a documentary. So you'll notice I'm just adding the word instrumental into my prompt and then getting these tracks back. Yeah. And then your other option would, of course, like let's say you wanted something that doesn't have lyrics, but you're okay with like background vocals. You can use our exclude feature to narrow things down from there. So, for example, I don't want something that has lyrics. So, what I'll actually do is add the has lyrics quick filter, go not to exclude it. And then over in the left panel, we have a category that says voices. And I might choose something like voice texture to narrow things down from here. So these are tracks that they don't have lyrics, but they do have wordless vocals. Yeah, so that's how I would go about finding tracks without lyrics. And then, as I said, you can add even, I would say this might like get a little bit murky, but even if you just typed in the word vocals while also having the not has lyrics tag in there might get you somewhere as well. Um, okay. And then there was one question earlier mentioned, I really like the keywords you're using. Is there a list somewhere? Because not all emotions and genres have keywords. Great question. So in terms of a list, the left panel is pretty extensive, like in terms of, moods and genres and stuff. That's kind of where I like to start for inspiration. So, for example, if I click on mood, you have all of these, but then you also have these subsets of happy, and these subsets of sad. And these are a good place to kind of like get inspiration. It's a good jumping off board if like I can't really think of the words that I need for my search. I'll come here and be like, oh yeah, okay. Definitely want something funny, and I really want it to feel more whimsical. So I'll go that route. You can do the same thing for any of these, right? Character, there's lots of options here, and genre. And if you're ever looking for something specific, you can always search within this menu and you'll find like all of these, subgenres of this is an example of blues. So this is a really good list to start with. And then the other thing that I'll point out is that our tracks they all have these like really descriptive track descriptions, right? And so to your point, not all emotions and genres necessarily are listed here, but many of them are listed in people's track descriptions. So even if you have a mood in mind that's not in the left panel, just typing it in could potentially get you some options. So, like for example, I see this one says offbeat right here. I know that this is not a tag necessarily, but there are 1,000 plus titles that have the word offbeat in the track description. So I also will look to the track description. Like, let's say I found a couple tracks that I like, and I'm like, what's the commonality between these? How can I find more tracks similar to this? I might go to the track description and see like, okay, how was this described here? And pull some of those words out and put them into my search bar. The other thing that you'll notice is underneath each track, I have the tags here that are associated with this track. And if you don't see those in your search results, you'll find them by turning them on in the customize menu. Right now, I have everything selected, but the tags are right here. So I'll toggle them off and back on. Um, when I click any of these tags, they get added to my search bar. So this is also a good way to narrow things down. You know, if I really liked this Astral Wave track, I noticed it's tagged as synthwave. Let me see what else is tagged with synthwave. Just click and go. Um, it helps when you are not as familiar with genres and musical terms. Especially for me, genre-wise, you know, there's like several genres that I love and like really specialize in, and then there are some that I might be a little bit less familiar with, and I don't know all of their individual subgenres. It's probably tagged with the subgenre that it is associated with. So I do find these tags to be helpful in that way. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to our next question. How do you search by duration? Okay, we have a cool little slider tool here. In the left panel, it says there's one for duration right here. We have a couple just like quick filter options, but if you're looking for a specific duration, you can type that in here. So let's say like I need something that's like between a minute 15 and a minute and a half, and I hit apply. And that's pretty much that. We have a couple up here as well for promos and ads, 30-second and 60-second quick filters, if that's the length that you're looking for. I will say when you're working on something that's like a sting, let's say like it's 5 seconds or, you know, something really short, you might want to play with the duration a little bit because there's often, you know, dead space at the end of a track or a tail that rings out for a while. So, like a track that is listed as being 5 seconds long might only have maybe 3 seconds of the actual melodic song. So, you can kind of give yourself a little plus or minus a couple seconds as needed, but that is the fastest way to search by duration. Love a straightforward answer, huh? Okay, let's move on to our next one. How do you balance algorithmic data with human curation when you guys are building the APM catalog? Okay, I see this as being kind of twofold. So the first, in terms of building the APM catalog and how we are selecting the music that goes into the catalog, that's all done by humans. We really emphasize the need to review tracks to be able to, you know, figure out if it's going to be applicable to us, applicable to all of you, and if it really has potential use in the sync world. So we do that, you know, we might be informed by some data in terms of helping highlight like things that are trending or things that we like holes in our catalog that we could use more music in certain styles, but we really rely on people to hand curate the catalog. And then as we turn to our search engine, while, you know, obviously we rely on metadata a lot to curate your search results, right? That's what all of this is. And we do have, you know, some AI-based tools. That's where you saw prompt search and sonic similarity to help surface tracks faster for you. And at the same time, we also have a full team of music directors who hand curate playlists for folks like you all day long. So, all that to be said, you know, we're using both. And if there's ever a time where you're either just in a pinch and need something really quickly, don't have time to search, or you're just not finding what you're looking for, our music director team is happy to put together a playlist for you. You can reach out to search at apmmusic.com to do that. we would be happy to help. That's what we're here for. Hopefully that answers that question. Another question that I wanted to address, it says, where do I find more crowd prompts like organ, percussion, noise meter ideas? I assume this is for sports related content. So let's dive a little bit into that since we haven't touched too much on sports yet. So in terms of crowd related stuff, I will point out over here we have in the left panel music with FX. And this is going to be tracks. They're all melodic tracks that have various sound effects, woven in throughout. So I will choose crowd here. And then to add like a couple more keywords to narrow things down, even just like dropping in the word sports is probably going to get you somewhere. I'm going to switch my search back to relevance because in this case, I really just need something that's relevant to these terms, not necessarily like the newest stuff. So let's hear some of these. And then, yeah, so there's some crowd noise in that one. Let me go back to here. And then let's say, this person also mentioned like organ and percussion. For organ, I like to use the phrase stadium organ. Oh, sorry, hold on. Stadium. I will put it in quotes. We also have a tag for it, but the quotes kind of gets me exact matches rather than getting matches that are tagged with either stadium or tagged with both of these words somewhere, but not necessarily together. I'll use quotes to get something that is stadium organ. And here are some. And then they also mentioned percussion. For sports, I particularly like to use like stomp, clap, percussive, stuff like that. So I might say like stomp, clap, percussive. Sports is always a good one to throw in there if that's particularly what you're looking for. And then, like, let's go back to the crowd thing too. Let's hear some of these. Oops. Yeah, so lots of stomps and claps and crowd participation. That's how I would find those types of tracks. If you are looking for sound effects, which, just individual like stomps or an individual whistle, some crowd noise, that kind of stuff, we do have a limited amount of that within our regular catalog. And if you're ever looking for that, I would actually just recommend reaching out to us. They're hidden under like alternate versions of tracks and things like that sometimes. So we'd be happy to take a look. We also separately have a sound effects package that is not part of our regular catalog, but if it's something that you're interested in looking into, please reach out to support@apmmusic.com and we can give you more information on that. And it is 11:46 that flew by today. So I want to be respectful of all of your time. I think we hit most, if not all, of our questions, but I'll make sure that everything gets addressed if there's anything left hanging. And I really want to thank you for joining today and taking time out of your busy day to learn a little bit more about APM and how to find the best music for your projects. I hope you found it helpful. And please don't be a stranger. Get in touch. We would be happy to help. Thank you so much. Have a good day.